Hello, viewers. You are welcome to Let's Talk About. Let's Talk About is a real understanding of social issues that bothers us as Christians. You are welcome to this week's edition. Today we are discussing Managing a Silent Killer, the second edition. Joining us today, we have Mrs. Dorcas Intiamwasaki, a licensed clinical psychologist, a certified cognitive behavioral psychology therapist, and Mr. Samuel Kofi Afum, a retired lecturer, a trainer of counselors at Christian Council of Ghana Counselors Training Program, and an author, and his wife, Mrs. Juliana Day Afum, also a counselor, a catechist, and a professional teacher. To discuss today's topic with me, I am your host, George Cordier Frimpong. Let me remind viewers that we are streaming live on our social media platforms, Trinity United Church, Legon, on both YouTube and Facebook. You can send us your comments and questions to the comment section on our social media platforms or to our WhatsApp number 0501 579 996. You are welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, for some weeks now, we have been engaging ourselves with the topic of hypertension. We've seen hypertension as one of the silent killers in our times, and we have had engaging discussions. And in the course of it, we realized that we need a counselor to come and throw more light on it, and then also to get counselors to be here to help us get into this important issue. And so you are here at the right time to help us do just that. And we want to begin by looking at hypertension, and I will take your insight, Miss Dorcas. Pardon me if I call you Dorcas. Dorcas, so as a psychologist, now somebody is going to the hospital. Normally, you don't go with the intention that you are going to test hypertension. You go for a general checkup. And then when you go, they look at your pulse and your vitals, and then they decide that, oh, let us check hypertension, let us check your BP, and then when they check it, then it's so high. How do they communicate it? Let me begin from there. How do they communicate it? And professionally, do we have resources to manage the shock that will be associated with the results?
Thank you so much, Prof, for this opportunity. First of all, hypertension is a terminal illness that when you are diagnosed, it comes to stay. So being diagnosed with this, even at the consulting room, when you are told, oh, madam or gentleman, your BP readings are high, so as a matter of fact, you are going to be on hypertensive drugs. It sends shock to the person. So the person goes through what we will call grieving process. So this grieving process, whether the person is going to deny it, whether the person is going to be angry at it, whether the person is going to bargain with his or her God about it, before the person comes to what we will call depression, and even before the person comes to acceptance of the condition. So when the breaking of the bad news, we will say it bad news because the person is losing a part of his or her ability. So if the person does not get the needed inner mechanisms to deal with it, what it means is the person is going to take a longer period to go through the grieving process. And at the end of the day, the fact that the person is staying away from treatment or medication is going to impact the higher reading of those BP. So always diagnosing or communicating the diagnosis to the patient should be done the right way.
Okay, should be done the right way. And what is the right way?
Okay, so you can treat it as any bad news, like maybe diagnosing somebody of a terminal illness like cancer, kidney failure, any of those ones that we look at, you will need a counselor or a psychologist on board to help the person understand the impact or how the thing is getting to it, because it's mental. What you think in your mind, that's what translates into your feeling and your behavior. So the moment you don't have a good mindset about the diagnosis, automatically you're going to feel bad about it, and the person will behave in a way, whether in a repulsive way or in an acceptance way. So if there is a counselor or a mental health practitioner on board in diagnosing or in breaking the bad news to the person also helps to deal with the mental process that comes with it, and that makes it a bit shorter for the acceptance of the condition, so that the person can go on with their treatment.
But I will still engage you. Do we have the resource people in our hospitals?
Honestly, that's the challenge as at now, because currently most hospitals don't have counselors or a clinical psychologist. So at the moment, Ghana Health Service is looking at getting psychologists to most of the district hospitals, which is a work in progress. So that brings the barrier, and that's why most people are not accepting their diagnosis and working on it to get better. So there is a gap, there is a challenge with the resource that is in our health facilities.
I will come to Mr. Efum, so you bring your Christian perspective to it. But before I come to Mr. Efum, Dorcas, once again, why should people have anxiety when they are told that they have hypertension? Why should they have all of these things? Is there a reason?
Yes, there is a reason. We are humans. Just like how I explained, we think anything you feed in your mind, it grows. And anything that grows, at the end of the day, it affects your feelings and it will affect your behavior. Let's take, for instance, from the scenario you gave, going to hospital without any notion, without any thought that I'm going to be diagnosed of such a condition. And you are told you are going to be on hypertensive drugs. You see, there is already this myth. Hypertension is a silent killer. You've heard people die of hypertension. Somebody had stroke. You just saw the person. The next moment, your friend is being told, oh, she's in bed. She can't wake up. Then that fear that surrounds it is what induces the anxiety. When we talk about anxiety, it's just about worrying and fear. The fear that is associated with the condition you've been diagnosed with, and the worry. So some people, even the worry becomes the source of heightening hypertension in them.
Okay, I will come back to you to ask you how to manage the anxiety, how to manage the results that will come, how to manage it from the clinical perspective, from the clinical psychologist's perspective. Now, Mr. Fum, you are an experienced Christian, a counselor for so many years, about 15 years. So what makes it difficult for Christians who are supposed to have faith that they can overcome every adversity? Why is it that when such news come, and they are so struck to the extent that they don't want to take medication? Do you have an idea?
We are Christians, but first we are human. And human as we are, we don't want to accept bad news. I, for one, have been hypertensive for more than 30 years. I got hypertension when I was just around 30 years. So I've been on medication for more than 30 years. And initially it was difficult for me to accept. But now, I would say that at that time, what I used to say is that I was young and foolish. So it was difficult for me to accept and even to be on my medications. But now that I've grown as a Christian, I've accepted it. That it is part of God's design. And because I always say that it's a blessing that I got hypertension. Yes. Because my way of life at that time was not good. That was why I say that I brought it upon myself. Because whilst I was young, I used to drink heavily. So I brought it upon myself. And through that, I've stopped drinking, and now look at me. So every time I get the opportunity, I tell people about the fact that most of these things, we bring them upon ourselves. Not thinking about the consequences. But as I said, though we are Christians, we find it difficult to accept these things when they come unto us. But when we accept that it is part of God's design, and then know that it is not something that's going to kill us if we don't remain careless, then we can live very well. And all those myths that people have been saying, when you take hypertensive drugs, this and would happen to you. As I said, I've taken it for more than 30 years, and none of these things, as they claim, I've not seen it. So if maybe it's going to come in the next 10 years, I don't know. But I have not felt it as at now.
With, you are still on the topic. I'm going to ask you, what advice would you give to fellow Christians who are watching us, who may be diagnosed and they think that I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. He that is in me is greater than he that is out there. And so I won't take any medication. I will be well. What would you say to those people, those Christians?
Whatever God does, he does it in his own way. He gives healing to whoever he wishes. So you may claim I am what is in me is greater than this and all those things, but it is God who assigns who to heal and who not to heal. Paul said that he had prayed over a burden 3 times, and God told him that my grace is enough for you. My grace is sufficient unto you. So if you think you are better than Paul, then you may be digging your own grave. When you get the hypertension, you need to take your medication. And one dangerous thing is when people take the medication and then the blood pressure goes down, then they think, I'm healed. And that is where the danger comes from. Most people who get stroke, that is where it comes from. You see that they stop their medication, and the next time that they are rushed to the hospital, they might maybe having severe stroke. So we are Christians, but we shouldn't forget that God also created these medicines and medications to help us.
Yeah.
So if you think you are better than Paul and all the others, and Luke was a physician, but Luke himself, why was Luke with Paul? It is because Paul was often sick. So if you claim that you are better than Paul, then well, I don't know what you are thinking about.
Yeah. As you are talking, what comes to my mind is the choral song that says that you never gave a promise that the journey will be easy. I always think about it. And then it tells me that in the Christian journey, there are surprises.
Yes.
It is not all rosy. And some people think that if you're a Christian, then everything should be so rosy. And so you are not going to hear such results. Everything should be positive. But these surprises are there.
Yes.
And we should be ready to accept them when they come. And that is also part of your maturity as a Christian.
Yes.
Mama, enti one Mr. Fum tenase wo hunu nyina bi. Edan ne de wo hunu nyansa bi a wafa efa saa situation we hu say o Kristoni ono so nya bi na so wonya eden kranhye sem na betimi aka kire saa Kristoni no.
The medical can say yare ewo hoyi obia nipa bia tumi yare enye se wo yare anache se wo de ase Nyankopon pe wa asem na yare no nso eba na wo gitum se yare no menya te se de ye ma me doctor kan yi menya yare no ekwan a mefa so a me ho beto me no enu na sesi a sese me fa so me ne papa itina ye 30 years mu an yewi me ware no kita yare da nanso esan ekwan a ye mienu ye fa so bua ye hu ninti e ma yare no emfa ne so nia ewom ni se enuro a esese onum no esese me hye ni nkuran e ma ne no because enuro no monum du ba bia na se de wabre but wo ka ne ho no wona esese wo hye ni nkuran eduru ba bia mpaibo enso ebem because eto da bia ndro no so onom kran so still na ade no fra na efro kosoro obekọ check up obeba no na still aye wo soro nso ye de mpaibo nkakra na nyame ya adom na asan ekofam enti eye kristofo yare eka ye ho eduru ba bia na esese ye gitum se yare no aba no ye be pekwan ye be fa ye be so ano hypertension wo yare bi a ase entu enti se fever ni malaria onum
na wotu ase
na ase etu neko anka 30 years nke ko dada but enko ye da so ho eno so nkire se na wie ya aba adwuma bi ese so ye bia no otumi ye sabi o se ne no oka no no oka se enu no ye se onum a emema na especially onum duru ba bia anhwe ya na wakoye mre na se utu mi nya wadwuma se bema
yes
but ye tena 30 years in wanum nro na ne so ne de otumi ye enti mi de mi hu ni se ye kristofo ne de ye re se nyame mu na yare ne ba ne ye de sese ye nyina eboa yen ema yetumi ekoso ye wo abrabo mu ese erade din so
edemase na me pese me bisa o enti sese ma wo sen
yawo 5
30 years mo ware na o hypertension nyame amamo emma 5 enti na sen sama nkofo bi keka no kra bi animo ayo edemase na we will be let's look at how serious hypertension is. Why are we so much afraid of hypertension? Can you say a little bit of it? Then the psychologist will also take it on from there. Why should we fear hypertension so much?
Hypertension is very dangerous because for most people who get hypertension, you might not have any symptoms. Some would say headaches and this, but I, for one, I experienced my first headache when I was about 21 years. So headache is something that is alien to me. So if I was going to look at headache as a sign or symptom before rushing to the hospital that I had hypertension, I would have died. So it's so silent, you might not even have any symptom. And when it comes, it can open doors for other sicknesses. I think as for that, Madam can say more about it.
Okay.
But you know that one thing is that hypertension usually comes through stress and anxiety.
Okay.
And when you have had the sickness, still you might be going through stress as you take your medication, as you think, why is it going to progress to another level? So if you don't control yourself and then also take your medications, it would degenerate into something more serious.
Okay.
So that is why hypertension is very, very, very dangerous.
Doctors, also, will you add something to it? Why all this big fear and anxiety about hypertension? When you finish, then we'll talk about the how to manage it. We'll talk about that as well.
Okay. So first of all, why there is that fear? Why there is that anxiety? You see, Ghanaians, we don't like visiting the hospitals. We don't like checkups because in our head there's this idea that when so some people with, if we have not seen it, then it's not a cause for alarm. And that's when the silent killer comes in.
Okay.
Because if you don't know, how do you even look for help or modify your lifestyle to help you? Daddy has lived with it for 30 years. It's because of the modification and the fact that he's adherent to his medication. And then the second challenge is we listen to a lot of people. In our homes, everybody is a doctor. Most people haven't gone to medical school, but they can say, oh, NASA, oh, Kubisa way. And what we should know is we are all different. The way I would respond to a medication might not be the same way that they will respond. So the fact that somebody took it and the person is having this side effect doesn't mean that you are going to. So all these things induce fear in us. We don't go and look for it for ourselves. We want to take people's ideas, concept, and that's not how health is.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting. As you are talking, then it comes to my mind. There are people who easily medicate. So when they have any feeling, oh, Koto, go and buy Tabia, go and buy whatever. Some of those, and for those herbal medicines, they are good, yeah.
Yes.
But it appears they can cure every sickness. And so somebody will say, go and buy this one and take it. I believe our audience are listening that because of some of these things, you may not know what is happening to you. So whatever feeling you have, first, go to the hospital. It seems that's what you are trying to tell us.
Yes, that's all I'm trying to say. And even if you want to use herbal, now we are incorporating herbal into the medical system. So we have herbal medicines unit. So if you are checked with hypertension, diabetes, and you say, oh, my doctor mpacho me pembro fudro no me pe bibidra, they will send you to the herbal doctor who will take his time to help you with the medications that you need. So now everything is even being incorporated into health, but just that we are not adhering. And one thing that I would want to stress on is, even as at now, WHO is advocating that we practice what we call the biopsychosocial cum-X model. What it means is biological, psychological, social, and the S is the spiritual aspect.
Is it in the treatment?
In the treatment. Now, they are asking us to incorporate it because they realize that we Africans, we are so inclined to the spirituality, whatever that it may mean to you. So when you come, oh, doctor, me pacho me tiwe dem say nyame na besel. Doctor will tell you, you take your para, pray over it, say your faith to it, and take it. It brings the healing that you want. So we don't just boycott it and let it be like, no. Even now we go to the prayer camps to give health there. So these are ways we are all trying. WHO is coming up with a lot of things just to get people visit the hospital.
Minimobia or media area. Going to the hospital will cost me so much. I cannot pay. And so they want to go and buy simple drugs. And I believe that is also very dangerous, isn't it?
Because if you don't know what is the real cause, what are you treating? Headache. At times you'll be treating the signs and symptoms of the condition. Meanwhile, the condition is there.
And some of these conditions could be hypertension.
Hypertension.
Dangerous.
Dangerous.
You take us through the some of the few ways to manage hypertension.
Okay. So the first one I would want to talk about is acceptance. You've gone for your BP checks. They'll give you a BP profile to go home, check it on a regular basis. You come, doctor says, this is what is happening. Kindly take your medication. Please go ahead and take it or accept what is happening. Ask doctor, what can I do? So this is communication, because the doctors, if you go and you don't communicate, there are lots of queue, so they won't make the time for you. Meanwhile, it would have been just an added something. Then you would go, and when you go, some of us we are in so much hurry. So you tell you go and see the dietitian. Go here, oh, many time. So all these things at the end of the day to go against you. And we were even talking about mental health. You see, the more you are not feeling well within yourself, it makes you worry. So you start becoming sad. You start withdrawing. There's this fear of death. And this is when depression starts setting in. And depression will eventually heighten the level of the hypertension. So it works hand in hand. There is this neurotransmitters in our brain. I'm talking about cortisol, which is a stress hormone. I'm talking about adrenaline. All these ones, they work on our emotions. And whenever they are releasing excess in our brain, some of them, the end product, cortisol, the end product is glucose. And when more glucose is entered into the body, what it does, it needs the heart to be able to work on it. And at the end of the day, that sugar, that is the end product, comes into your bloodstream. So you even check for diabetes, and they're telling you it's positive. Meanwhile, you take care of your diet, you don't do this junky eating, you don't smoke, you don't do all those things that we say brings diabetes and hypertension. But meanwhile, you are there. It could be as a result of stress
Yes.
and depression.
So you've been talking about stress.
Yes.
Okay, and that is also very interesting because we know that stress is a major problem facing the modern Christian.
Yes.
Stress. And so we need to look at it. And we want to also pay a little attention to stress, especially in our relationships.
Yes.
Oftentimes, what we hear, it didn't have any problem. Then all of a sudden, he's dead. We hear it, especially young people who are at the height of their profession. And then, sure, they are gone. And either hypertension, which may have been caused by stress, or the fear of it, the depression, and all of these. Mr. Efum, stress. So you are the counselor and the Christian. You're a Christian counselor.
Yes.
Why should there be the stress?
Stress is something that is always with us, just like conflict. You can never do away with conflict. So all that we need to do is to know how to manage it. It's the same thing with stress. In our normal situations, stress, when we say stress, we have good type of stress and the bad one.
Okay.
Some stress is good. For example, if you are going to write an exam and you get another stress, that is what is going to make you learn well, prepare well, and then pass the exam well. Without that stress, you will just be going about your normal things, and then you might not perform as well as you expected. So some stress is good. But when the stress lasts for a long time, or when the stresses are off and you are still suffering, like under tension, you have that mental tension, you are worrying, and that is where you have a big problem. Because that then goes into anxiety. So normal stress is something that we have because we are human.
Okay.
In our relationships, we came from different areas and different backgrounds. So what you like is not what I like. So even that alone, what I use as an example sometimes is something as common as the toothpaste can result in conflict, and that can bring about some stress, which if it's not handled well can result in serious conflict that can break or harm the relationship. So as for stress, it's something that is with us, and so all that we need to do is how to manage the stress when we get it.
And see, I'm imagining that with the hypertension for 30 years, Mama has done very well in not stressing you. Is that true?
That is true, but it also is my perspective that even when I'm somebody who is quite free, so if I don't think about people and their problems, and even I have had hypertension, then should I add other people's problems or to be thinking about things that I can't do anything about? The Bible told us that by thinking we cannot add just even an inch to a height. And God told us in the Bible that the flowers and things, they do not plant or do it, but they thrive. So it's just that as Christians, we should have had very little problem with stress. But unfortunately, it's like we've been given a lift and we are sitting in the vehicle still carrying our goods.
Mama, Obi can send be chere me say, meti hoi. Ade bi wo ho a minim se mempe. Enso me ka kire me wife a me kan no atea me. Enti asem le kura mpo mintimi nka bio. Ena me de ahye me mu. Enti se ye nkasa ena de no ahye me na sa de na me se ehu ana. Wodwene ho sei.
One thing is say awarefo and as a relationship will be a muno. Ade ba ko asesi a my stress bebre lack of communication. Ye nya bre say awarefo ana say me fa ni say awofo ne ma. Ana say abusua entena se enkasa emmon komo. Emma obi ntimi nka na adwen de ha no enkyere ne yonko. Na afei krampo no se ye kan so a esan se ye nya brinti ye ntumi misa bisansem ma ye hunu nipa no adeko pote a ha no na ya fa kwan bi so atumi aboa no enti bra nipa ne kasa no kra sometimes obi wo hokro ni kunu bo nkomo a wa fi adwuma ba wa brenti nkomo no mo bo no kra na ni beba no so na be ma no wada ja enti e ba sa nipa no ene na fi adwuma ba me ha me ho kra po se me koka me ha obi e de a kire no enti se communication ni honom nkomo bo ni honom a e de sa tension no e ba aware enum anasa relationship no se si ayehwe ye ma ye ne omonam a bebre aye depressed by yenim be nkoda ni bebre because omo ni awofo awo timika won sem any won how e kire wo enti wo man kasa na e manage wo ho eno na dey how bebre e ba no enti lack of communication at e ba ko a e ha relationships e wo ye Kristo so mu anywhere as
you've touched on very interesting angle of our discussion, the fact of absence of communication in our relationships. And when we come back, we'll be going for a break. When we come back, we will dwell on it a bit because it is a problem. You see, one thing, we take communication for granted. When you say it, everybody says, oh, we communicate. Oh, we communicate. We will talk about it and see whether really we do communicate in our relationships.
Okay.
With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians. With the growing challenges of life in light of both global and domestic development, the Christian is faced with the difficult task of balancing survival within a secular system and at the same time living a Christian life that pleases their Maker. It is for this reason that we need to have frank conversations on the many issues of life through the Christian lens. So, we bring to you Let's Talk About. On Let's Talk About, we talk about health, career, dating, marriage, family, divorce, politics, finance, and all the issues of life that the Christian is confronted with on a daily basis. Join us this and every Wednesday on the YouTube and Facebook pages of Trinity United Church Legon, and let's talk about life as Christians.
Welcome back. Let me remind our viewers that we are streaming live on our social media platforms, Trinity United Church Legon, on both YouTube and Facebook. You can send your comments and questions to the comment section on our social media platforms or to our WhatsApp number 0501 579 996. Before we broke off, we were talking about stress. Stress as it induces hypertension, and stress which is also caused by the news of hypertension or any other sickness. And we said that Mama was talking about how communication plays so significantly in our relationships, and as a result of which, if we don't manage it well, it can lead to all of these things. It can cause stress, and they can also make us get hypertension and other diseases. Fortunately, our counselors here, Mr. and Mrs. Afum, this one is Mr. Afum, has written a book, Understanding and Managing Anger the Christian Way. And I think it speaks a lot to our discussion for today. The couple have done a joint collaboration to author Effective Christian Marriage, Developing a Solid Foundation. And that book too is here. I believe when we finish, we will get to see where we can get some to buy. Then we have Effective Christian Marriage, Building Solid Foundation. I believe this is book 1, and that this is book 2. So we are in good hands. Talking about communication, as I hinted earlier, many Christians will admit it that as for us, we communicate. There is ample communication in our marriage, in our relationship. We talk. Is that true? What are we not doing right when it comes to communicating? Mr. Afum, do you...
Okay, when we talk about communication, the essential part of communication should be how effective the communication has been.
Oh, okay.
That is where we have a challenge.
Okay.
As for communication, we do all the time. But how effective is the communication? And for communication to be effective, you need to take a lot of things into consideration. That is the environment, the person that you are talking to, the person's mood, and all that. They matter. Other than that, something that you would have said and had fun with, because the person is in a bad mood, you say the same thing, the person will get angry. So it means that communication, we communicate all right, but we don't often communicate right. And most of us don't place as much importance on communication in relationships as we should. Actually, communication is just like the lubricant in an engine. I explained that in the book. When your car engine doesn't have that lubricant, or is short and you don't top it up, the engine seizes and it breaks down. And that is what happens to communications. When communications begin to reduce gradually because one is annoyed with the other, and then all that, there's some conflict, and you are not communicating well, it gets down gradually to a point when communication ceases. And when communication ceases, the relationship, no matter how it is, it will break down. And that is what is resulting in the breakdown of so many relationships.
So, Mr. Fum, help us. So, I know of a couple who would say that, as for us, we don't need to talk. We don't talk. We don't have a problem. You know, and when we get problems, we handle it our own way. And Dorcas, I'll be coming to you, that the type of person who says that, I don't want confrontation. So when there is a problem, I won't talk about it. Let us leave it to time, and time will heal it. Now, that couple says that, for us, we don't have a problem. We don't need to talk.
If you don't talk, when we talk about relationships, as Christians, we will say that the highest form of relationship is in marriage. And before you marry, you go through some steps where it is communication that builds it up to the highest level. First, you'll be strangers. Then you meet, and then good morning, good afternoon, then you exchange names. Now you become acquaintances. Then when you continue communicating, then you tend to become friends. And when you communicate more, interact on so many levels, then that is when you get to the highest level to become partners. Then that is when you are now like full partners. But if you stop communicating at that level, it would deteriorate until it gets to a point when you claim you are partners, but actually you are strangers.
Oh, okay.
So communication is inevitable. You can't do away with it. So the fact that there is a problem, and that's why we don't need to talk about it, like you bury the problem. No problem can be buried. Actually, when it comes to conflict resolution, there are various methods. You can avoid the conflict. That is when you ask for me, I'm not going to talk about it. But it should only be for a short time until tempers have cooled down. So that I can sit down and discuss the issue. You have a discussion, but not an argument.
Oh, okay.
When you have an argument, everybody takes an entrenched position, and that one is not going to bring about any solution.
Okay.
But when you have a discussion, whatever is the outcome is the two of you that have agreed. So that is one thing too that people do not know.
Oh, okay.
And they often argue when they should discuss.
Thank you. Thank you. So it means that communication is different from argument. Now, Dorcas, from the psychological point of view, there is that individual who says that, for me, I don't like confrontation. If I say it today and when I look at you, you don't like what I said. So next time I won't say it again. I'll just keep it to myself. I think that is good, isn't it? Or, I mean, isn't it one way of managing, stress and problems so that they won't come again?
Okay, so thank you, Prof. I would want to take this thing that we are talking about from even childhood. You see, we all have our innates that we come with. Some of us are naturally extroverted. Some of us are naturally introverted. But the nature where you grow up plays a role, whether to modify it for you to communicate well, just like our daddy said, or you go the wrong way. As he said, communication comes with emotion, your gestures, your demeanor, the way you even respond to the person. It's not all about the words that we use. Some of us, even our children, you don't communicate with them. Mommy, I want this. Then we are giving phone. Daddy, this. Daddy comes and the next thing is he remove his dress, take his food, he's on his phone. No communication. So the child grows with the intuition that that is how a man should be. That is what a woman should be. So at the end of the day, right from upbringing, communication, we have a big gap. So how then do he or she get into marriage and know that I need to communicate this way? And our part of the world, we lack assertiveness. Most of us are not assertive. We are not able to express ourselves how we want to do it. So at the end of the day, because of that lack, we think probably what I will say would affect my husband. He might not talk to me the next day, so the next day, let me keep it inside me and then hold on to it. And that is where there is a challenge.
What is the challenge there? Is there a problem? Can this one cause stress? Can it cause hypertension?
It will cause big time hypertension because you are using what we call defense mechanisms in psychology. And these defense mechanisms that you are using are negative ones. So we have what we call regression, repression, we have displacement. So we have some bosses who end up displacing their stress on on somebody else, a weaker version. A husband displacing his anger on a wife because he knows the wife that won't say anything to it. So always we pile up. So as if you have a bottle, every time you open, you put small in. Every time, one day the bottle will become full. And if you don't get the wisdom to open a bit for something to come out, the pressure will mount up. And then at the end of the day, it's going to burst. And that's when we will see people walking outside, talking on their man, a fine man in his car. He's coming out and he's talking on his mouth. Like you can see even on his appearance, this man would never dress with an iron dress to church. But today, he's in it. He doesn't care. And this is where we talk about mental health issues. It starts from somewhere.
Okay. Mama, me ba ho. Say enti say wo say o ka bibi kire ye no Christopher yi say me to ho no bi kra me nim say yes me de ade ye bufu na me bufu na be kan we kire me na nya some de metia wo enti no o partner ne ba o ka asem na no watia no enti partner no so ontimi emma me kasem no bio ena woto nso a wonso wonim say de wo ye na ha obi o say wose ka bibi kire amanfo oya kan so nipa nso bi oya asore pani metoi me ye nipa kese bi wa asore no mu na me de amne ne tie no osuro mi se oba be kasa o me hu etisa etimi sisa ena de asem na abeka a kire yen
etumi si bebre even asofo obukura ewom na de ewom ne say yen before eduru baabi a esan sɛ yɛ ka yɛ hyenti no yɛntumi ɛmma ne ɛwɔ yɛ mu no yɛnyimpie abɔnten mimi sɛ me nkɔla abrɛm na efi me nkɔla abrɛm na sɛ me yɛ mpanyinsɛm na me gye to mu ntam efiri sɛ nea me hu ne sɛ me deɛ bibia a ɛwɔ ɛba ma adwene mu a me pɛ sɛ me ma obi te no mɛka ma nate wo pam me ana wo tea me kora na me gu so ka agye sɛ nea me pɛ sɛ wo kyerɛ me no wa mahu ansa na megyae enti saa na metie me ware yɛ nso bi di komu nipa na me ne te no so hu sɛ saa na mete enti me bisa na asɛm na o explain ma me ho ntɔ me a me nya no e ma ne nyɛ ne o yɛ sɛ ɛkɔba sɛ yɛka yɛ mahyɛ te sɛ deɛ me nua ba yi kan yɛka yɛ mahyɛ yɛka yɛ asafo mahyɛ anaasɛ yɛka yɛ busua yɛ kunu yɛ yerenom ne adeɛ hyehyɛ a ebeduru baabi no ɛde ɔhaw ɛna ɛbɛbrɛ yɛn enti etwa sɛ nsɛm bi ha yɛn a yɛtumi da ne di enipa na ɔka asɛm akyerɛ na ɔmpɛ sɛ obetie no ɛsɛ sɛ wo ma ne te aseɛ me no ne tie anaasɛ woyɛ asafo panyin anaa woyɛ ɔsɔfo anaa okita dibre bi ɛno no deɛ ɛyɛ adwuma mu asɛm yɛbɛ fie a ɛyɛ me ne wo mienu asɛm nti woyɛ boss ɛwɔ adwuma mu efie wonyɛ boss woyɛ me kunu woyɛ me yere nti asɛm ba ne yɛka me yɛnka ne sɛ ekunu ɛne ɔyere na nte aseɛ ɛmra efi sɛ yɛtwa yɛn ho a ne yɛkɔ adwuma mu ane a yɛbɛsɛ yɛba fie yɛni baabi akɔ saa nso na me ne wo mienu yɛyɛ adwuma ɛwɔ adwuma no mu na yɛwɔ no etwa sɛ yɛte yɛn ho ase efi sɛ da bia yɛbɛhyia wɔ ha nti asɛm ba na yɛka yɛn paipai mu nka na obi akoma ɛntɔ ne yam sɛ deɛ bɛyɛ a yɛbɛ adwuma obi yam ɛnhyehye no sɛ ɛba sɛ attention bi ani hɔ obi anyɛ stress but sɛ kɔba sɛ yɛka yɛn ho hyehyɛ na mekɔka a ɔbɛtea me ntimi nka asafo no mu kora sɛ deɛ wokan asafo panyin bi wɔ hɔ asafo ma ntimi mmɛn no nanso sɛ yɛyɛ kristofoɔ deɛ a ɛsɛ sɛ yɛgye to mu sɛ onyankopɔn ɔmpamo yɛn ɔse wabie ne nsɛm da bia ɔtwɛn sɛ yɛbɛba nti sɛ nyankopɔn na yɛsom no no ɔtwɛn sɛ yɛbɛba ne nkyɛn deɛ a yɛn a yɛyɛ kristofoɔ nso ɛsɛ time biara yɛma afoforɔ etumi bɛn yɛn asɛm biara ni hɔ nom a ɛso kyɛn onyankopɔn yɛma yɛn ho kwan sɛ yɛbɛbrɛ yɛn ho ase na nyankopɔn asɛm ɛne ne honhom ɛtea yɛn yɛkɔ asɔre ne yɛ preachi ansɛm na yɛte no yɛmfa nyɛ adwuma yɛma mpaebɔ nso ntimi yɛn ɛno nso so boa yɛn ɛfi sɛ asɛm no Awurade asɛm no Bible no bibia bi wom from A to Z bibia wom nti yɛma asɛm no ntimi yɛn na yɛma mpaebɔ nso ntimi yɛn.
Okay, Mr. Fum, I'll be coming to you. But what Mrs. Fum is telling us is advice to all of us Christians, TUC members. This is a call for us. I hear some people are suffering. Some people are suffering in relationships, but they don't know how to handle it. And that is what I'm coming to Mr. Fum to help us. They don't know. We've said that you have to talk, but they know that they can't talk because he will shout at me, I fear him, or I fear her. The way she will even look at me, the way she will listen, or I can't dare do it. You know, so this is to us who we are Christians. When we come to church and we are busy going up and down serving God, I think we need also to begin from home. Charity begins from home. Now, Mr. Fum, if somebody is going through these challenges, communication has broken down, and yet he or she knows that they are in a very difficult relationship. They are in a very stressful relationship. They are not able to keep their minds. They are not able to keep their peace. And yet Christianity says that no divorce. How do we handle this situation?
Usually in relationships, just as I said, that communication is very, very important. When you enter into a relationship, my Adam and I, what we did was that we made a commitment that we are never going to let communication break down. And this is because she had her way. Whenever she's like sad or moody, she wouldn't talk. And then I would also be sitting down thinking, Kofi, what have you done? Then I examine myself, I see that I've not done anything. Then I also get annoyed. So it means when she's ready to talk, I'm also annoyed. And for that, we waste about some 2 to 3 days. Then I said, no, what you're doing is not good. It's like we are fooling ourselves.
Yeah.
The time that we would have had to enjoy each other's company, we have wasted 3 days on needless listening. Because usually sometimes when we even sit down, when we said, okay, now let's sit down and talk about this issue. Sometimes even what brought about demeanor in the decision doesn't even have anything to do with me.
Okay.
So we said, okay, now we are never going to let communication break down. We took that, we made that commitment. And so we talk about everything.
Okay.
So this is something that everybody can do.
Okay.
But it's just that sometimes when you want to talk to somebody and the person is angry, for that, don't talk.
Okay.
Or when you are angry, don't talk. That is what we were talking about, that when it comes to conflict, you can, that the avoidance, where you can just distance yourself for a while. So you can tell the person, please, I'm annoyed. So give me some time to cool down, and we'll talk.
Yeah.
And then make sure that when you have cooled down, or no matter what, talk about the situation. Because if you don't talk about it, you can never solve whatever happened. You begin to be, you'll be making assumptions that, oh, I think this is what happened. It may totally be false. Just as I said in a case, I would examine myself thinking that I've done something wrong. But in many instances, it has even nothing to do with me. Something from the workplace. That somebody said something, or just that, somebody said women, to understand women, the book is like an encyclopedia.
A compendium.
And then men, ours is just so small. So sometimes what you were thinking was the issue is not that at all. So the best way to get to the bottom of the matter is to talk about it.
Okay.
So for me, my advice is that no matter what, never let communication break down. If you are too angry, suspend the talking, but eventually do talk about the issue.
How do you relate it to what the Bible says, that don't let the sun set on your anger?
Yes. This is another commitment that we made. For my wife and I, we decided that we were going to use the Bible as the only standard in our marriage. And that was the basis of our writing these books. Because when we started doing that, we saw that it's like every problem in our marriage just vanished. No conflict. Last, I was telling her that I don't remember the last time we had some serious conflict. So maybe I should intentionally do something so that we can have some argument. It's like everything just vanished because we decided to use just the Bible as our standard. So if we claim we are Christians, and if we are Christians, then we should be followers of Christ. Use His word as our standard. And when the Bible says we shouldn't let the sun set on our anger. So we did just that. When you start doing that, initially you might find that it's a little difficult because you're somebody who was keeping something in you for weeks before you talk. But if you say that we will not let the sun set on our anger, ours we say that we will not let the sun rise on our anger. So sometimes we will sleep, but at dawn we'll sit down and then talk about the issue before we part ways in the morning. So every problem, we don't have any problem amongst us because we've solved everything that comes up through communication.
Thank you. Dorcas, from the psychologists, how do you manage these things? That, for instance, one of the partners thinks that always I am the person to initiate it. Why should it be always me? And as for him, as for her, she will never or he will never admit that, I always have to be coming to. What advice do you give? We are Christians. How do we manage this situation? It is killing some people. What's your opinion on this?
Okay. So with this one, I can't pay for, but let me share my perspective on it.
Okay.
Yes. So I remember when we were going for counseling, our counselor said, marriage, you tolerate, you adapt, and then he used 3 words: tolerate, adapt, ignore, and communicate. So
Tolerate,
adapt, ignore, and communicate.
Okay.
Any of these 4 elements should be used in any of the situation that you are confronted with. And personally, I use it and it's working. Because if you decide to communicate, looking at the time, is it the right time? Is it the time for me to ignore? Is it the time for me just to tolerate? It has happened. What can I do?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
adapt to
Do
it.
you know many people, Christians included, cannot ignore? They can't ignore.
It's true.
Once you've done it, I give it to you. I also speak my mind. And the biggest problem is they can't ignore. Yes, Dorcas, you want to say
That
something?
is one of the major mechanism anybody can build. If you want to be mentally resilient or build toughness in your mind, it works. Let's take I always use these 2 domestic animals as an example. We have a dog and a cat in our house. Look at how they respond to issues. Let's just flag a red something here. A dog will bark the whole night, losing its nervous system, its energy, its strength. The same thing will pass. A cat would just look at it and blink the eye. Do you think the cat cannot fight it? If a cat wants to kill, it will take a second to kill. A dog will take a minute to kill. It's just your response, your reaction to things that makes them tangible. So if you are excused maybe to say you are misbehaving in a way I don't like and I decide to ignore, that doesn't mean that I never paid attention to what you said. I just don't want it to affect me. It's about me, not you. And that is where the hypertension comes in. When we all come to that sense that it's not about you, and human beings are part of the things you can't control. What I see I can control are my thoughts, my emotions, my gestures, my response to anything that you do to me. And I will authenticate what you do with my response. So ignoring is one coping or an adaptive measure anybody can build. It's hard. It's very hard to build it, but when you are able to build an upper hand over it, it helps you in this journey we call life, especially in our world today, where we lack mental toughness. My generation, we are another breed, because a lot of things influence us. This thing we call social media and all that. So we've got it. We need to.
So we will add to the list of the virtues, ignore. And what I learned from it is that ignoring doesn't mean ignorance. Ignoring doesn't mean ignorance. And that you need to ignore to keep your mental sanity. And it is very important in all of these discussions that we are making. We are learning a lot. Maybe we get Mr. Fum to say one final word about stress, our management of it as Christians, and speak to somebody out there who is going through this issue and it is driving the person to nuts.
Okay, when it comes to stress, I think I'll start from where she ended, that ignoring things. There are sometimes some things that we could easily ignore so that we would have a free of mind. We would just keep following it. So just as you said, we need to ignore. And then also you need to know your partner, how your partner copes with stress. If the person is somebody who shouts and this, then when the person is shouting, don't take it personal. That is his way of coping with the stress. So just as she said, ignore. And when you ignore, there's no, but if she's shouting and you also want to say something, you're going to have a serious conflict on your hands. And then we shouldn't pack our plate too much with so many things. Everybody would like you to do something for them. But when we feel that we have too much doing, we should learn to say, no, I have too much to do, so please, as for this one, I can't do it. Other than that, you would have to be running around doing things and mostly pleasing people at the expense of your health because you'll be so stressed out in life.
Thank you. So we are at the end of our discussion, and I believe our audience have benefited from our discussions. We will continue the discussions in the course of the weeks, and we are going to take this silent killer from an alternative perspective in the weeks ahead. Thank you.
You're welcome.